Simple Mind Express. This is lovely. It's a very simple mind map application. You can create mind maps on your screen. You can drag the little boxes around, redistribute it. It's very colorful, very simple, and very easy to use. If you get a pay version, you can synchronize it with your desktop computer. But I just use it on my iPhone, and then I take a screenshot of it, and then I have it as an image. I've never bothered to pay. It's very nice, well worth checking out. Okay, those are 4. Does anybody else have any other apps that they use that are not specifically for EFL that they would recommend? There's quite a few iPhone users. Richard?
For language practice, a game like Boggle, you have to pay a little bit for it, but there's a free similar game to Boggle available on the App Store.
Yes, there are a few games, that's word games.
Word games, okay. You could probably just do a word search in the iStore for word games. Richard, you can't remember the name of that app, right? The Boggle one?
The free one, no.
What is it?
Boggle is the...
Boggle is the pay one, okay.
Hangman, there are several.
Hangman.
Hangman
Okay.
Word Extreme, there's another. You're given several words and you have to make as many words as possible.
Right, so yeah, okay.
Nicky?
Yes.
There's something called Crossair.
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 Mm-hmm.
So you walk around holding up your iPhone and it gives you a little box above in buildings and so on, giving you lots of information. So you can find a burger bar or you can find a Wikipedia entry.
Great, okay. We'll come back to that, geotagging, in a minute. Thank you very much, Pete. We'll go more into that, okay? Did somebody want to add something here? No? Okay. I want to get through this fairly quickly. I don't want to get stuck on apps. I think the problem often with apps is that people think that mobile learning is a mobile phone, and it is not. And I hope by the end of this session we'll have that very clear. But, you know, apps are nice, and there's some good ones out there. These are ones that are free and paying, or free or paying, EFL apps for iPhone from some of the major publishers. There's not much available, or at least I couldn't find much yet, but I know that publishers are on the case, so expect to see more. The first 2 are from Longmans. Skill Pills is a kind of a business-related series of very short video scenarios with drawn figures, with key phrases, so for example for negotiating or something, and you can hear, and you can replay and work on pronunciation and so on. Is that accurate, David, what I've just said?
Yeah, based on the Intelligent Business Skills book, so it's functional language for business people. And basically, it's that language when they're on the go. Critical moments when they just want to revise language. It's mobile, they can do it anywhere, in a taxi, you know, before a meeting.
Okay, great. So they're little short sort of, all of these things are very short. There are a couple of dictionaries, one again from Longman. That one, I think both of those are pay, but most of the publisher stuff is pay at the moment, although I believe free models are being looked into. There's the Grammar in Use series from CUP, so sort of gap fill type, drag and drop type activities, another app. And then the one at the bottom there is Business Podcasts from Macmillan. These are free. And they're specifically related to one of the business course books. Of course, there are authentic business podcasts as well from people like the BBC.
And the dictionary is also amazing because it has got buzzwords, and you can give the word and then they try to guess what it means. I've got a Mac and I'm always online. I use the Macmillan Dictionary with the buzzwords.
Okay.
And they can pronounce and hear the pronunciation.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure if people at the back heard that. This is the Macmillan Dictionary. There are a number of... Okay, it's a free Macmillan Dictionary that has buzzwords, another one to check out. Okay? Fine, that's really it for apps. I want to move on from here and look now at some of the implications of all of this. I think when we're talking about using mobile technologies, there are several sort of, I like to think of them as clines or kind of gradients that we need to think about. The first one is, are you going to do it in the classroom in terms of formal learning, like we saw with the primary school students, integrated into your normal formal teaching environment, or you can move all the way across to completely independent, on-the-move mobile technology use by your students. And we've seen examples of both of these during the talk so far. The next thing to kind of keep in mind is the idea of pushed content versus pulled content. So pushed content means that the teacher might, set up a little quiz, an SMS quiz, and then push it out to the students, and you receive the quiz on your mobile phone, and then you do the quiz. Okay? And the opposite is pulled content, where you as a learner go along to the BBC and you have a look at the business podcast and you subscribe to the business podcasts. Okay, so there's two different models here. Teacher pushing stuff out, or learner going to the source and pulling stuff in that they need. The strategic use versus discrete use. This to me is the key. I think showing you that iTouch project is to show you a very good, in my view, pedagogically sound, strategic use of mobile learning. The opposite end to that is the whole app thing, which is fine. You can do your grammar drag and drop, or your, flashcard memorizing of Hindi vocabulary. That's all useful stuff. Discrete learning is part of learning. But we mustn't lose sight of the fact that there is a strategic role for mobile learning in our classrooms. That's something to keep in mind. Getting away from the idea that mobile learning is mobile phone learning, because it's not. Okay, and then again, the idea between this of rich content on the one hand, which would be access to the internet, where you have everything, and access to social media, such as Twitter and so on, Facebook, whatever. And then the other end of that line, which is discrete content, the idea of quizzes, flashcards, translation activities, vocabulary blanks, and so on. Okay, so we have the whole kind of gamut that we need to keep in mind. Is that okay? Is that clear? I'm kind of going on about it, but it seems to me very important that we keep the left-hand side in mind. Okay, these are some of the levels of difficulty that are commonly talked about with mobile technologies. The first is screen size. I mean, if you look at the iTouch or the iPhone, the actual size of the screen is small, which is fine for some things, but for accessing the web, it's not great. If you need to navigate web pages. Many web pages now come in a kind of a version which is easier to read on these screens, but not all. So that's one thing. The screen size is an issue. Also the idea of typing. I mean, for me, this having to type on the iPhone where you kind of push letters is tedious and slow. And I personally would never do my online Moodle course from a mobile phone just because of all the typing that's involved. So that limits the amount that you are actually going to produce in terms of typed text. Another consideration is, of course, data plans. If your students are all bringing mobile phones to class, what sort of mobile phone do they have in the first place? What kind of data plan? Do they have access to the internet? How? Do they have limits on how many megabytes they can download? Do they have to pay every time they connect up? And then, of course, access. How much access is there? Is it easy for them to access the internet? A fourth thing, well, I've just mentioned that, in fact, the different devices. One student has an iPhone, one student has an old, very old, 15-year-old phone, and so on. That's a problem. Available software, as we've seen, is fairly limited for language learning at the moment. It tends to be this very discrete kind of content-based apps, which is fine, but it would be nice to also have some rich content in there from publishers in the future. Those publishers who are here. David's looking out the window. Okay, yeah, including multimedia into these apps, I think, is the way to go. All of these smartphones these days have these capabilities, and they're getting better all the time. There's a lack of teacher training. So, of course, teachers hear about mobile learning, but haven't got a clue, first of all, what it is. And then, what can I do with it? How do I integrate it? That's that kind of, I've missed the boat. How do I do it? Whereas our students, especially our younger ones, are already mobile literate. And then the last point there, the idea of institutional inertia. So you may be mad keen and very, avant-garde in your teaching and want to rush back after this talk, go off to your DOS, say, we're going to be using iTouches with all our classes from now on, and you come across a complete blank wall at an institutional level. There are quite a lot of institutions, especially in the States, at university level, who are carrying out projects using iTouches, iPods, iPads, etc., at undergraduate and mainly at undergraduate level. And there have been some interesting results there. So that's another thing that you may come across as an issue. Is there anything I've missed there in terms of kind of levels of difficulty? Yeah.
Main difficulty in my country, in Argentina, is policymakers. I mean, it's forbidden to have a mobile phone in class.
Okay, they're forbidding mobile phones in class. Yes, I don't know if you remember, I think this was in Australia where there was a test. There was a school where schoolgirls were allowed to take a test with a mobile phone so they could access. Do you remember that? It was a couple of years back. There was a big thing it got all the way over to Europe in the press. And of course, your standards slipping, and how could you possibly take a test